and started worshiping an image. We've got to make sure that we do a better job of teaching our children, our children's children, our children's children's children, the importance of God. Yes, ma'am. He coming to you.
And that's what the children of Israel were required to do.
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
They were supposed to teach them, when they were sitting down, when they got up, so they could keep these statutes in their memory.
Yes.
But it's just a cycle, like Brother Lee was saying. It just started rotating and kept going. Now it's down to our generation. And we are not doing what we are supposed to do, because when you look around, it's too many of our young people who just grow up, graduate, leave school, leave the church.
Yes. Let me tell y'all what two young adults was asking me. We were standing outside. I guess I was leaving one evening, and they saw me standing out here, and they walked up, and they said, "Preacher, let me ask you something now. Do your daughter go to church?" I said, "Yes." "Do she take the children to church?" I said, "Yes." "So what happens when the leader's children doesn't attend church? What happens when the leader's grandchildren doesn't attend church? Y'all tell me what happens."
Even if the children are not in the home, but not just leadership, it's a reflection on the members whose children are not coming, because it's going to be hard to influence somebody else's children to come. When they say, "Well, your kids don't come, Sister Glasper, so how you going to, get on me about my kids coming?" And a lot of times, these are kids who are not members of the church. So we have not done a good job, me and probably several others in here, whose children just grew up and left, and they are not trying to bring their kids up in the Lord. And it's a reflection on us.
Yes, yes. And that was my point. We've got to get to the point where we understand that as members of the body of Christ, trying to convert other individuals, we've got to do a better job with our household. Yes, sir.
Let me say this to y'all. I brought up all of my kids in the church. Kid them, sit them down, they attend Bible class. Let me say this to you. When kids become grown and move out on their own, they're going to do what they want to do. The Bible says that you train them up, and when they're old, they want to depart from them. Of course, they'll come. They might pray that they come back and everything, But it just, back in the 60s, I can name a family right now from Athens, Alabama, the Malone family. The dad brought them up in the church, and most of all of them still faithful today. All of them still faithful today. Great grandkids and great grandkids. So,
So it's possible.
do your best as parents. We all brought our kids, all of us here brought our kids to church or whatever. But when they get a certain age, they're out of your house and everything, you don't know what's going to happen. Just pray for them. It's just like the young man who asked his father, "Give me what belonged to me," and he left. The rich young, he left, but his father prayed for him anyway. He was always looking out there for him or what have you. So we as parents, we do our jobs and everything, but our kids gonna do what they want to do. I'm learning that, and I'm still learning it. We might well face it. They're not in your house. What can you do? Pray for them. That's what you can do. I pray for mine all the time, that perhaps if they're strayed away, they come back to the Lord. Give them time to come back. That's all we can do. It's no reflection on anyone. It's just that my kids they got married, they left their father and mother, they cleaved to their wife or to their husband. So that's what we're up against. But the important thing is to pray for our kids. Keep them in prayer at all times.
Edith.
What you say is true, but I think a lot of young people today too, they ask their children if they want to go to church. They don't tell them.
Say it again.
Like, they rate them, hey, are you going to church today? No. Get up and get ready and you go to church. I'm not asking you if you're going. You're going to church.
So what we're seeing is a difference in parenting,
Definitely.
and the parents are actually more lenient than our parents were.
Yeah.
And because there's a more lenient side of them, we're actually seeing children just do whatever they want to do.
Or a lot of parents drop them off and they don't come, so they follow, when they get a little older, they just depart. They drop them off at church instead of coming to church with them.
Okay. Sister Glasper, and then I'll go back over here to Sister Stiggins.
And I'm not disagreeing with anybody, but I'm still saying there are things that we either did or didn't do. And when our kids got older and they are grown, I don't know how much we tried to persuade or influence them. You need to keep your kids in church. Even if they are not going, I know they're grown, they got the mind of their own, but with so much going on in the world, even if they are not bringing their kids, as grandparents and great-grandparents, we still have a responsibility to try to get those in church, even if you can't get your grown kids, because of course they do have their own mind, their own families, but they got a soul. And if these young kids are not being brought or encouraged to go because their parents don't go, then they going to grow up and their children are going to be the same way. We still got a work to do.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Sister Stiggins.
My response is similar to Sister Glasper's. While I understand what Brother Parker was saying, I do agree with that. As a parent myself of an adult child, I'm constantly talking to Darius about going to church and is he still attending. I know his schedule is so busy with basketball. He plays a lot of games on Sunday. I'm like, do not forsake the assembly. I want to see my grandson brought up in the church. So I'm curious to know what your answer was when those young adults asked you that question about your child. What feedback did you give to them?
I gave him, this is what I told him. It's the influence that we have on our children. Yeah. And our influence counts for something. They've got to see and hear how we elevate the church, how we need the Lord, and how that you can't make it without the Lord. Now, my child is nowhere near perfect, right? None of mine are. But at the same time, I try real hard. I've always tried to let them know, you make sure you go to church, regardless what you did last week or the night before. You get up on Sunday morning and you go to church, because you don't know when the Lord is coming back to judge this world. We have issues, but the only way to overcome it is that we grow in the Word of God. Our influence means something. And this is what I really want to work with tonight with Joshua, because I want to show you Joshua's influence. All right? Yes, ma'am.
I hear everybody's talking. I think there's a difference in bringing my child to church and growing up in the church.
Okay.
And teaching them the values, or say, for instance, they watching you every day. You come late, you're not interested in it, you're not teaching them what you're supposed to do in the assembly, they don't respect it. So I think there's a big difference in just bringing my child to church and just let them sit there and not teaching them anything and how to respect the Lord.
Amen. Amen. That's a plus. Thank you. Thank you. As a leader, Joshua, and this is what I kind of want to harp on here tonight, because, when you study leadership, they always take you to the book of Joshua. Yeah. Because Joshua came up under a very strong man. Yeah. Even though Moses complained to God and told God he didn't have the speech, he didn't have the tongue, he stuttered, God showed him that I can still use you. And what I can do is use your brother to speak for you. All right? So what we ended up seeing is there was no way to make an excuse for God, about what the task God has placed before you. So what I want to do is, if I can get this thing worked right, here we go. I want us to keep in mind that as a leader, we ought to lead others to a victory. All right? And if you look at Joshua, you'll find out both the positive and the negative. Now, I'll show you the negatives up front, because when Joshua died and those leaders that was with him died, the people went astray. All right? So after about the third generation, the people went astray. So looking at that ought to help us as men and as women to keep some things in mind. Regardless if the children are not in your home, we have an influence that we must live by and strive to achieve with our children, with our grandchildren, and with our great-grandchildren. My grandmother told us, you going to church. I don't care if you played last night, you drunk last night, you still going to church. That generation made sure you went to church. Now, I'm not saying that whatever they said and did was always right, but you had respect for the church. Huh? I'm not sure that we even have that same respect anymore for the church. All right? Now, watch this. The leadership influence is important. As a father in a home, as a mother in a home, your influence speaks volumes. Your children are going to watch you, how you live, how you speak, how you carry yourself, where you go, what you say you don't go, who people you let me tell you what Ashton told me. She said, preacher, you going to cut grass this morning? I said, yes, ma'am. Don't be like this man that was cutting grass next to our house. I said, what was the man doing? Standing and listening in other folks' windows. I said, how did you know that? I was looking at it. She 4 years old, y'all. She 4. She picks up on everything. She listens. She can be in the house, Carol and her mama outside talking. She run outside. Yo, yeah, y'all talking about me now. And I said, if we can see how children are very intelligent, then we've got to make sure that the life that we live in front of them is a type that can influence them down the road. Alma, you got your hands full. You got a boy. And he's going to watch everything that you say and do. And he's going to pick up on things a lot smarter, a lot quicker than we did in our age. Yes, sir.
In a lot of your sermons or lessons, whether you're in Bible class or preaching from the pulpit, you reference a lot of your upbringing back to your grandmother. Whether she slapped you or whatever, your grandmother is in the grave right now, right?
Oh, yes, sir.
The reason you do that is because she still has influence on you.
Yes.
From the grave.
Yes. Yes.
You still respect her, so to speak.
Oh, most definitely. That's why I tell you.
I mean, we laugh about those things, but the raising she gave you, you're thankful for it, and you're appreciative for it. Therefore, she still influences you to this very day, how you conduct yourself.
Yes. I tell you sometimes that and she was quick to say, go on that porch and sit down. So I tell Carolyn, I said, if my grandma was alive right now, and she said, boy, go sit on that porch.
Yeah.
Guess what I do?
Yeah.
I go sit on the porch.
Yeah.
Because she meant what she said.
Yeah.
And there was a reason behind
Influence.
what she said.
Yeah.
I didn't always understand it. But now that I'm older, I do understand, and I go back and I laugh.
And there's a lot of us, I think, in here. Our parents may be deceased or whatever, or grandparents, whoever raised us. They still have influence on us.
Yes. Yes.
They're in the grave. And
Even if they're not in the grave. Now, Sister Gladys won't tell y'all, but I saw the respect that they have for her mom at the funeral. And I saw how Mary Ann and Rosetta looked at everybody and you know how they came in and where they sat down and how they conducted themselves. And I said the whole time, I said, Mama must have some serious influence over here at Lucas Street Church of Christ. Serious.
Have to go to church. That never even came on Sundays and Wednesdays. We knew where we were going. And all of my friends had to go if I was going to go anywhere else. So it was just instilled in us. Those are the 2 days that you don't do anything other than go to Bible class and go to church. And it was 12 of us. And sometimes we would ride with somebody. Most of the time we walk. And a friend now used to always say, here come them Macklin ducklings, because we would be walking behind each other.
I thought you been say you never said a cuss word.
You meddling over there, bro. You meddling over there now. Oh, goodness. Keep this in mind. Exercise and expand your spiritual influence and help other people go to heaven. People, little area where I live, lady across the street, her house burned down. Y'all know who got the first invitation to come? That housewoman. Guess who did a prayer? Later down the street, when her and her husband got divorced, and she was outside crying, guess who she told her kids to go get? Later across the block, now, round the curve, her husband just left her. And I'm on the prayer line. Y'all know every morning at 6 o'clock. She came, knocked on the door. I know you're busy, but you need to pray for me right now. I mean, where you live, you got to influence those people. How you live speaks volumes. What they see you do speaks volumes. Where they see you speaks volumes. God can use every single one of us. He needs average Israelites to work together to accomplish his divine plan in the world and in our generation. Never say that you're not important in God's kingdom. Yes, sir.
Brother Roger, would it be okay if I throw something out for a discussion
Yes, sir. Throw it out there.
or a debate?
Oh, we're going to get in debate.
Yeah,
Don't take the mic to Rosetta, and don't take the mic to Sonia Braxton.
Okay. and I don't,
Go ahead.
And I don't mean no harm. I'm not making no excuses. So I'm preference all of this before I say what I'm going to say. Leaders in the Church of Christ, the majority of them, if they are a true leader, a working leader, one of the faults that those leaders have is that they are so busy trying to save or work for the congregation, they forget their families. Yes, sir. And I think that that's one of the things that happen. We work so hard, spending all that time at the congregation, and we forget about our own families.
That's no debate there, Doc. That's no debate. That's true.
One other thing.
Yes, sir.
Now, saying that, if you look around, ministers, elders, and deacons, those are the ones whose families, in the eyes of the congregation, are less faithful in the eyes of the congregation.
Lord Jesus.
Much of that is because they spend less time. You're saying that the preacher's daughter, the preacher's son, is the worst person in the congregation. They don't
used to
show
say
up.
that.
They show up late. The elder's wife, the elder's son, the elder's daughter, they don't show up because they are so busy worrying about the other members of the congregation. They're not at home. Just a comment.
Let's go with it. Oh, she got the mic. Go ahead, sweetheart.
I'm a PK.
Okay.
I do agree with, yes, preacher's kid. I agree with him, but when we was children, we had to learn to adapt to it. We became workers because there was times when there was issues that my father had to deal with that was dealing with a child that he had to bring me or my brothers and sisters in on. And we did feel a lot like we were left behind because he was out, this and that family and preaching and doing this and that. We had to talk to Dad and tell Dad, hey, what about us? When we did that, Dad had to take a good look at what we was talking about. We had to show him that we felt like we were being left out. And like he said, in the church, you do feel like you're not important anymore because Dad is not there. Dad is always ministering somewhere. We had to talk to Dad and tell him, and Dad had to then realize that, hey, you got a family. You still got to make time for your family. And Dad, he had to learn that and get to that point to where he did make time for us, because that's when I started cutting up. When I felt like I wasn't getting
You cut up?
Oh yes. Oh yes. I mean, I left the church.
Sure, man.
I totally like what Brother Parker said. I mean, the influence was there. I knew better. Certain things happened, or we fell along the side. And it took something to humble me to bring me back. Dad called me every day, prayed for me and with me. My girls, it was not an option. Dad was coming to get them, taking them to church. It wasn't an option. When I was young in his house, it was not an option. It wasn't no asking. I mean, we better been up and dressed by the time his feet hit that floor. Yes. We had to go, no matter what. So yes, we do as the family sometimes feel like we're left behind or we're not important, but we just had to tell Dad and get Dad to that point to where he had to make time for us, no matter what. Because we still needed our father. He was there spiritually, but we didn't have him there as Dad. Okay. And he had to, we had to get him to that point to where he realized, oh, okay, we were starving for attention. We was cutting up. I mean, we knew better, but I mean, I can't say we did it to get his attention because we knew what we was doing. We had been taught better.
You probably did.
No.
Yes, ma'am.
So where is the leadership's priority when it comes between the church and the family? How do they? Are you asking me? Well, any of them.
Okay, this is what I did. This is no jokes. I didn't want my wife to work so that she would be there for Mary. I thought that was a way to do it, but Mary still told me, I need you, Dad. So I had to learn how to break away from everyone else to be there for her. And she tells me now, you put the grandkids before me. I said, yeah, girl, you're 31 years old. So she said, just like you call the grandkids, why not call your child? You call your members. I said, well, no, they call me. Yes, sir.
Just to add on to that, and I'm not making any excuses and so forth, because I accept my life and my family as it is. I had a job that I would work 12 hours a day, 10 or 12 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And I would leave that job, and I would go to Ferris Drive. And I'd be there at 10, 11, and 12 o'clock a lot of days. Then I'd go home, go to bed, get up the next day.
And do the same thing.
Because I thought that I was see, I'm the type of person that I felt that I had to provide the materialistic things for my family. And I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was providing spiritual thing by being a leader in the church. Every time the church doors open, I was going to be there. And so I hope that they would come behind me. But like Sister Taylor was saying, a lot of time that didn't happen. And so I can look back on those times now and say that I shoulda, coulda, woulda.
I understand that.
But that's it. But I thought I was leading by examples by being there. But my mind was still on the other members of that congregation that I had sworn a duty to work for.
Yes.
And so sometimes I think that is probably the reason that you need leaders, that's all they do is leaders and not even have a secular job. But we can't afford to have that.
Right.
And so we wind up having secular jobs.
Right.
No excuse.
Right.
This is just a conversation. That's all this is. So I'm not making no excuse about my family at all.
But for future leaders then, since this seems to be one of the problems, because before a person takes on a leadership position, they have to desire that position. So at that point, I would think a mature Christian should be able to see the time, the need, and what it is to be a leader, and to be able to try to, in a sense, balance what it is, whether they need to go to training, before they actually become leaders, to say, you have a 12-hour day job. Are you going to be able to fulfill your duties as a leader and to take care of your family and working a full-time job? So if this is a problem with the young leaders and the young brothers coming up, that needs to be something that should be stressed, that this job is going to take more out of you than maybe you are able to give at this point. And so that's why I think you have to have mature men who get in these positions. And if you already got your house halfway in order, because it may not be all the way in order, then you should be able to see what it is that I need to continue to do, since I have really 2 full-time jobs. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot. And, you got to make sure that the wife is going to take up some slack as far as bringing the kids, teaching the kids, getting the kids prepared, because they are in the spotlight, because everybody is looking. But really, being a member of the Church of Christ, everybody's child is being looked at, because we say we're the only ones going to heaven. So they want to know, if Sister Glasper's daughter can go to heaven, anybody can go to heaven, because that's what they are looking at. They see your child, they know what they are doing, and then they can turn around, well, and if Sister Glasper can go to heaven, anybody can go to heaven. Because we are in a spotlight, yes, whether we want to be or not.
Yes.
In school, when I'm, on my job, and when I say something, they want to know that what I'm saying is reflected on what I am.
Yes.
And not just what I'm saying.
Yes. Yes. Yes, sir. Let me get Brother Parker first.
Okay. Lost my train of thought. I guess it come back. But back to what James was saying, I always wanted my father to be at my games and this and what have you. And with a man with 14 kids in the house and working out on the auction for the federal government, working 12 hours like James were, he was trying to see that we was fed. He didn't have time to spend time with all of us boys or what have you. But he made sure that he went to work, he got a check, he made sure the bills were paid, he made sure that we went to church. He emphasized that. And that was good. But I just wished he was able to spend time, come to my games, but he wouldn't come to none of my games. But I made myself a promise. If I have sons and daughters, I'm going to attend all the activities at school, and I'm going to bring them I'm going to encourage them and bring them to church when I come. Then if they fall by the wayside, pray for them. Of course, my dad did all he could, But for black family, it was different. It was different. You done good to hold a job back then, especially if you working for the government. You know, you was in the trenches digging the hole, laying the pipe. Everybody else watching you. You know, so we in time now, as fathers, we have to do better. We have to teach our kids, we have to teach spend time with our grandkids. That's important in their lives. That's important. And teach them about the Lord. Every day, I send my grandkids scripture. And I call them and talk to them on the phone and ask them, are you reading the scripture? And they say, yeah, I'm reading it. And matter of fact, I quiz them on it, you know. But we do the best we can. And that's all we can do. You know, my kids, my grandkids, they know Papa gonna come to church. They admire me for that. Now, I pray that y'all will do what Papa doing. If not, you're gonna miss out on all your blessings. You know. So it's where we have to encourage one another. Matter of fact, back when I come up in the church raised the family. The church was involved in kids' lives. I used to come over here to Franklin Street. Back then, everybody took care of somebody's kids, was influencing some kid's life. We don't do that nowadays. We look at kids and say, I don't want to have to do with that kid. These are church folks today. We had nothing to do with the other folk kids. But back then, they did that. Why are we not doing it today? Why can't we grab little Johnny and say, hey, I love you, you can't do this, let's do better? But we care less about kids in the church nowadays. And that's not good. We might well face it. You know.
Everybody don't have that mindset.
Well, it may not, but I'm saying what they did back then.
Yeah, now
and I don't see that mindset today.
Several in here are mentoring children. Maybe you just don't know, but there are several mentoring children. Brother Lee?
My take on leadership, especially in the church, is family first, then the church, and then your job. And that's got to be the order. If you desire to be an elder and you desire that work, that's how I feel things ought to fall in line. Family first, then the church, and then your job.
I want to go back there to Ashton's mom. Y'all don't know this, but Ashton's mom, dad is a preacher. And I want to, I said Ashton's mom. You don't have a name. You don't have a name. Ashton's mom. You don't have a name. Ashton's granddad is a preacher. Tell me, do you think you got left out as a child? Yes. So I'm going to call him tonight.
I'm not going to say left out, but there was a considerable amount of time that he had, if he got a call at 2 o'clock because one of the church members were fighting, or he was, yes, to a certain extent, I do, because he was always ministering, teaching, visitation. Whenever the door is open, he was there. So yes, I guess to a certain extent, yes, I do feel like I was somewhat left out.
I'm calling him.
You can.
I'm calling him.
You can.
Pass the mic to the lady in front of you because this is the preacher's wife. Sister, did you feel like you were left out?
Yes.
Sister!
Yes, because, the ministers, they have to do so much. And, he had to go visit the sick. He had to go, when they die, he had to go visit the family. And the wife be left at home. And she's just like, she didn't have no part, of it. So it seemed like the members was like, he was more closer to the members than I was.
Sister!
Yes. I mean, he just spent more time with them, like more than me. But I did. I held on.
I know you did.
For 43 years, I did.
43 years.
43 years.
You held on.
Yes, I did. So I know he had a lot of work to do. So I didn't.
You supported.
Yes, I supported him. Yes, I did.
So you didn't make him feel bad.
No.
Okay.
No.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Let me tell y'all what Sister Body told me one day. I don't know if she remembered this conversation. She said, somewhere or another, you're going to have to spend more time with Sister Rogers. She said, but you got it kind of beat because you can buy her those gadgets and gadgets, and they'll entertain her until you get back around. I wanted to tell her that even when I'm at home, she got those gadgets and gadgets. She used to do it. Pass Sister Body the mic for a second. Now, what you say?
I said because she's already used to doing what was doing all along without you being there. So I'm not going to give it up just because you're there now, because that's the habit that I have been in.
Okay. All right, Calvin, go ahead.
You know, you and I had this conversation probably, I don't know, a few months ago or weeks. I continually tell you, Floyd, you're working yourself to death. I tell you that all the time. And when your mom passed, I think you're the type of person that you got to be doing something, because if you stop, it kind of gets to you. But even then, I told you, I said, Floyd, I said, there comes, and I think a lot of times people forget this, sometimes the minister gets weak too. His faith might get a little shaky just like ours, and we forget that. And they need to be lifted up from time to time. So I remember when Moses, was it Moses' father-in-law told him, said, boy, you doing too much. You need to get some more men up under you to take care of Israel. You can't do it all by yourself. And I know I mentioned your mom and you love your mom, but I want you to know that we love you and we want you around here for a while, Floyd. You got to slow down. And I know it's just in you to do what you do, and we appreciate that, and I'm saying this, but sometimes we forget about you, okay?
Doc, I got 9 years in. Y'all know I've never been in the congregation 9 years. So this is sort of new to me. I stay busy.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and I told Brother Gray this years ago, somebody has to set the tone.
Yeah, sure.
How that leaders must carry themselves and what they must do in order to help the church to grow. We have in our mind that I'm right and you can't show me anything. I've been doing this for over 30 years. There's a lot of experience here. And the younger guys are picking up on it. We just need to make up in our mind what kind of leader we want to be. A church leader, spiritual leader, is he's looked at, he's judged more than anyone else.
Yeah.
So you've got to show people that there is Christ in you and you can overcome. You can win. We quote Philippians 4:13 a lot, but I don't think we really know what that means. Now, who's going to tell me what Philippians 4:13 say?
Can do all things.
Now, preacher's wife, I knew that you knew that.
Yeah.
I knew the preacher's wife and the preacher's daughter knew that verse. Yes, ma'am.
But I don't think that scripture means for you to do all things.
Sister, I'm not trying to do all things. I'm not trying to do all things.
You're
Yeah,
gonna
you do.
you're gonna have to delegate. That's the reason you have leadership, to be able
Be
to
quiet,
pick
Edith.
up some slack from you, because if you get sick or drop dead, the leader's gonna have to take it on then.
If I drop dead, sister, you can tell you what's going to happen. If I drop dead, Brother Sanders is going to be called, and he going to preach until they find another preacher.
Yeah, but suppose in that time, half of the congregation leaves.
That's the reason I use him like I do, so that people can get used to him, and they won't leave.
But the leadership may not want him.
And that may be true, but they still know there's someone they can call and get in here when the chips are down.
But you got elders who should be able to do the same thing that they are calling. They shouldn't have to call anybody, because a good leader would be able to step in your place and carry the congregation on. You say you've been here for 9 years. At your 5th year, you probably should have started getting 2 or 3 brothers lined up when you leave to go do anything, that they step up and the congregation moves smoothly. So if you're gonna be here, with somebody else coming in, I'm saying use what we have. We have the resources here, and we need to use the resources that we have. We shouldn't have to pay somebody to come in to preach, because as long as these brothers are preaching the truth, I think all of us would be able to sit up under how many sermons they would do, or if they divided it up. But at some point, this congregation, since it has always been known as an educated congregation, at some point, we need to start training teachers and preachers and song leaders from within.
I totally agree.
So we can go forward and always have somebody else to be able to step in if somebody's not there. And I think if we can get, I don't know, this education committee, or even if it's just to put people in place to fill in, stop burning up our teachers that just teach all the time, and we're not trying to train other people to teach. We do have a lot to do. You just can't do it all. You're going to have to be able to delegate it to others to be able to carry out this work, because the more you do, the lazier I get.
Lord have mercy. Brother Booker, thought I saw you with the mic. Okay. Well, Paul. Edith, was you trying to say something? Okay.
It's not that Henry, I, or Milt can't preach. That's something we can do if we had to. But y'all have a problem with paying the elders. The point, what I'm saying is, I agree with what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying, everything. Now, if we go to church history, we go in and do a study in church history, we bring out a lot of things about the New Testament church. It's just a tradition that churches have preachers or what have you. But if you do church history and study real closely, you will learn different. You will learn different if you do church history,
Don't let church history mess you up with Bible history. Go ahead, Brother Ray.
This is a wonderful subject, and I'm trying to, because have been so involved in the subject for so long, and there are so many branches of this subject, and so many opinions about it. Of course, the times are different, and we do things and so forth. I would offer this about when we say that when Brother Rogers is away, and this is not disagreeing, but nowadays we have a expectation on Sundays from whomever is in the pulpit. And if that expectation is not delivered, we don't want to be there, or we won't come back. See, I could stand up there and say the same things as Brother Rogers said, word for word. But my delivering of it is going to be different, and you probably not going to enjoy it because of the way that I deliver it. So it's not.
It's a spiritual thing.
Wait now. See, I say this about. I'm just trying to, and I'm not saying everybody, but I'm just saying this is the way it is. It is delivered. Why is it then that all those years that all of us been in the church, when who's the president? Jack. If Jack went somewhere, why would Jack fill up a building and Brother Rogers can't fill that same building up, and he is all the time? Because we have an expectation. It's to deliver it. Last Sunday, Chris Turner was in Florence. The building was packed, full. But why? James Gray is there. Why isn't it packed with? James is saying the same words. Now, James don't sing like Chris, I give you that.
That's what got it right there.
From a biblical standpoint, Chris is not saying anything different than James. So I think it's the expectation is that we have lost what we maybe even come to church for on Sundays. Maybe we need to get back to that. Why are we even here?
You know
Just
what?
a comment.
You know what's happening?
Tell me.
And it's a trick of Satan. We are getting just like the denominational world because we're coming to church to be entertained again. That's what's happening. And see, we talk about this all the time because we got it right here because, well, who's teaching Sunday school? Brother Rogers, Pat. Brother Redmond, Pat. Me, Cal, well, small group. You see what I'm saying? When we all teaching the same thing, it's supposed to be the truth,
Good
right?
point, brother. Good point. Preach.
The truth.
You're right there.
And the problem is with us. The problem is with us because we're coming here to be entertained just like people in denominational world. And we need to stop it because as long as someone is teaching the true word of God up there, we should be attentive and listen and apply it to our life. That's the problem.
Amber?
Since we're on this subject, it goes back to the young adult class. When you're not there,
Yeah.
nobody wants to be there.
Yeah.
And when you ask them to come in here, they don't want to come in here because they feel like, oh, the adults argue or something that they have against it. And it makes no sense to me because you're teaching the same thing that you would be teaching down there.
Yep.
Don't give Jovita the mic. Go ahead, Jovita.
I don't, and it's just a question. If something happened to Brother Rogers and the day before, if somebody asked you to get up and preach, you trying to say you won't preach unless you got paid? Because that's what it sounds like to me. So you're not doing it out of the love of Christ to preach the gospel. You're doing it to get paid. But I'm just saying. Okay, but I'm talking about you personally because you made me, and correct me. So you're saying you would never preach if you didn't get paid?
But see, the difference is, there's a difference, because the scripture I think you're going to, I think you need to go back and look at it, Paul, because you and Brother Rogers are different. He lives by the gospel. He lives by the gospel. You live by the educational system in what do you teach? And that's what you, when it talks about that double honor, Paul, it's talking about an elder who's an elder, and one
preach the word.
Hold on.
And preach the word.
And live by the gospel. You don't. He does.
Let me say this. I went to school to be a minister. Let me make that clear to all of y'all. I attended Abilene Christian University. My study was in the ministry. But I got out of it because I saw how guys was doing. Now, back to you. If I had to do it, I would do it free. But I went into education for a reason, because I knew I would always have a job. You see what I'm saying? That's why I went to education, because I knew that I would always have a job, and if God called on me to do his will, I'd do it and not charge anything. But to get back to the point, the Bible does teach an elder that preached the word of God should be paid. And we had one here at Fair Drive that was on the payroll for preaching. So let's not say that an elder shouldn't get paid, because we had him on payroll here. You know. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, I understand what you're saying. I understand exactly what you're saying. You know.
It's so much teaching here. I hear things, and it helps me to see the level of biblical education that we have and don't have in so many areas. And I'm not just talking on speculation. I'm just really looking, and people really don't understand the text. But that's an opportunity for us to teach. Let me get Sister Brazelton, and then I'll come to you, Sister Body.
You know, Jesus had 12 apostles that he taught and mentored. And when it came to preaching the gospel, Peter was the one who was qualified to speak. And, excuse me? He was an elder. Yeah, he was an elder, but in terms of the qualifications of those who were able to speak to the congregation, to motivate them, to rightly divide the word of truth. And that is because he was the most excellent of those in Jesus' circle. And I see the same thing here. There are a lot of people who have the ability to do the job, but we have responsibility, I feel, to God to use the most excellent. And that is why we went on a ministerial search. And, you know, we have a ministerial leader here. And in terms of just the qualities that it takes to lead and speak and motivate and develop, I think a lot of times we just take that for granted. And it's not everybody's calling or passion or gift to be able to do that. And for us to think that the average person is just going to sit under the tutelage of a person just because he's a man and can quote scripture, whatever, is not reasonable. Because we are at all different levels of spiritual development, and we have the right to be, you know, exceptionally led. If the standard is always excellence when it comes to God.
Thank you.
The Great Commission tells us all to go out, preach, teach the gospel. And I've always been an advocate of this right here.
How you gonna cut Sister Body off, Doc? Go on, finish that what you're saying.
Because you know our sisters outnumber us, right?
Yes.
And all of these things can happen. I
Yeah.
don't care what nobody says.
Yes, sir.
Brother Roger can be on his way to worship one Sunday and get an emergency and can't make it. Then you're going to scramble and go and get some preacher from somewhere. Somebody needs to get up here and do this. And going back to Peter being the most excellent preacher, but on the day of Pentecost, all of them preached because they were all preaching in different languages. Okay? So, but the thing is, we can come in here on one Sunday, and there's only one sister, there's a bunch of sisters here, and one brother show up. So what you gonna do? You gonna call off service? You see what I'm saying? See, this is the deal. It's on you, brother, whoever you are, to do everything.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now get a mic back to Sister Biden. Let me hear what you got to say. Sister Cheryl, you got your hand up. Lord Jesus. Wait a minute. Brother Biden, you brought this on.
I think we need to.
Wait.
Then you come speak, okay. Then you next.
Come on, Sister
I
Biden.
want to go back to the original question that we had, where Kevin was saying that you need help. So help me out. Is the elders the only person that can help you?
No.
And we're not talking about preaching. You need help in other areas. When you do programs and stuff, that you can delegate somebody else to take this load off you. It is not just about the elder stepping up, helping you to preach. Members have to do it too. So, everything comes about, it's the elders need to do this, the elders that. What about the members?
Totally agree. Yes, ma'am. Sister Mary Sherry.
I think we need to go back and study what the part about elders being apt to preach and teach. And that's being in your absence. And he said in an emergency situation that they would be able to step up. That's one of the qualifications that they have to have in order to be an elder. So if emergency situation arises, then somebody need to be able to get up there and take your place. If you're not present, or if you got sick and was present, somebody here should be out of the elders. A deacon should be able to get up there and preach in your place.
I got somebody that's ready to preach in my stead.
I'm not talking about somebody you have to get off from somewhere else.
No.
You got to be ready.
I'm talking here. I'm talking here.
Talking here.
I'm talking here.
Well, that's what I think she was talking about. Somebody, you're supposed to be qualified as an elder to preach or teach. That's what they say in the qualification. So.
To teach.
Preach and teach.
Teach.
Or teach, whichever. Preaching and teaching is the same thing.
No, ma'am, it's not. It's really not. It's really not. There's somebody else. Can I go back to Joshua now? Let me go to Joshua now. He gonna preach now.
The song service has just ended, and I'd like to welcome all of y'all to the service today. It's just been a absolutely wonderful week. Sister G, how you doing? See, there she go. What is the sermon on today? It's on John 3:16. I have been preaching for 30 years. And as I was looking through my notes, I could not find where I had John 3:16 as a lead-in to my sermon. And I just could not believe that after all of these 30 years that I have not had that as a lead-in to my sermon.
So
there is somebody here.
Hey.
That if it was necessary.
Hey, I'll go along with that. If somebody can get up there and read what he's got on verbatim off of his slideshow or piece of paper,
I couldn't help
it's
that,
the
Sister
truth.
Lee.
Take it.
Brother Roger, man, I just think that it is no doubt that there are men in this congregation that if we came here on Sunday morning and you was not there, that there would be a word from the Lord.
Yes, sir.
There would be a message.
Yes, sir.
And I think that the only thing that some of us were saying is that we are just used to a certain delivery of that message. And as Sandra was saying, is that all of us are not given that gift of being an orator.
Man.
And that's the only thing I think that we're really looking at. You know, all of us like a good orator and so forth that can deliver the word. But I think the word is here and it could be delivered. It is just the way that it was delivered.
Very true. Very true.
I was listening to Milton the Sunday that he was up there, gave 2 sermons. He didn't say anything different than you said. That's right. But Milton is not the orator. It's Brother Rogers. And that's not negative. It's just that he got other talents.
But I think, though, and I know that the bottom line is, as long as it's coming from God's word and kept in context, it doesn't matter whose mouth it come from.
It should
and
not.
And whoever can get up there and deliver it better than the other person, it doesn't matter. The word of God is going to save us. It's not that individual who sat up there using excellent speech. That's not what's going to save us.
My problem is, and a lot of times, and this is what I see, and this is what I've heard here tonight, is that when the text is pulled out and extorted, that's going to lead people in the wrong direction. That's why I don't always call on people, because it's important that you keep text in line. And when you see this happening, and I see it because during Bible class, Brother Rogers, this came up. Brother Rogers, this came up. People don't want to hear erroneous truths. There was a brother that went to inner city to preach. He taught that God created evil. He didn't understand the text. He didn't do a word study. Therefore, he taught those people that God created evil. Those people left there wondering and saying, I thought that God was pure. Mm-hmm. And because God is righteous, why would he create evil? So, and Edith wasn't the only one that contacted me. There were other people that asked me. So when the other people asked me, I had to go on and tell them what the actual text is saying. So then I wonder, if I put it before somebody here, would they get it? Could you explain it? And when you see something, a lot of times people want to preach something just because it fancied and they saw it and it excited them. So they go out and teach without really knowing. That hurts the people. And I don't think people understand the importance of preaching. And they understand the importance of keeping text real, staying with what God would have us to say. Yes, ma'am.
Well, you shouldn't leave it up to maybe the brothers who you're going to put in place if they haven't been trained or taught how to do it. I know the apostles didn't have the script, but maybe you ought to leave a script. And that means that you already have a sermon prepared, the way they deliver it, but you would know this is the truth, is being rightly divided because you have prepared. And the brothers can practice. That's what we do when we train people how to do things. We train them how to, because a lot of times they don't know how. Now, if a person is too bullheaded and don't want it, maybe that person is not ready to be up there. But if you are training and you have written out a sermon, you maybe went over it with them, anything that they didn't understand, you explain it. For me, it's not about the delivery, even though I teach public speaking, and it is about delivery.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
It is. But if you are listening for the truth and you've been in the church long enough, you ought to be able to come in here and listen to a sermon, even with bad singing. Because I've never really been in a congregation that had a good song leader anyway. So I don't have to have a good song leader to sing. But I'm back like Calvin. We are here a lot of times for entertainment. And if the song leader is singing and, you know, the song service is good, then we're looking for a preacher to get up and be able to piggyback off that and keep all the excitement. But how many of us know what you preached if you would actually ask, what was my sermon about and what did you get out of it?
I'm hoping they're getting this about Jesus, though. Y'all keep this in mind, and I'm doing this backwards. In Joshua chapter 10 and verse number 14, the Bible says, and there was no day like that day before or after it, that the Lord hearkened unto the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. What I want you to do is, when you go to Joshua 10 and you get to verse 14, I want you to underscore that where he fought for Israel. This is so important because in studying the character of Joshua, Joshua learned that God can do all this stuff. And it's amazing what God can do. All right? And I got a couple of things I'm going to have to pull on you tomorrow night because time has gotten away from us. I did not know y'all was going to go like that on that one. So in verse number 13, the Bible said, and the sun stood still and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So that the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and has not gone down about a whole day. That ought to get your attention. Because for Joshua to ask God to not let the sun go down or the earth to move so that they could avenge their enemies. This is an awesome story. But keep this in mind. I think this is where I want to go. Okay? Yes. Yes. No. This is actually a book that is just left out. Now, whether or not they could not find it, we don't know. The scholars don't know. There is not only that one, but there are several more. I think I did a lesson on the book that's mentioned in the scriptures that we couldn't find. Now, you know, they do those, they did the lost books. Now, a lot of those lost books were not connected to the canon. Y'all know when I mention canon, I'm talking about the Old Testament. All right? So when you see it like this is mentioned and the writer is inspired, that means that was an inspired book. Okay? In order to appreciate this, we need to examine the life of Joshua. We need to ask some questions about Joshua, and we need to ask Joshua some questions. How many of y'all like to do character studies? To examine the biblical character, we need God's revelation, to see God's intervention, to respect God's evaluation on individuals. God has an evaluation that he's done on every character that we have in his plan. Sometimes just go back and look. He showed you the Apostle Paul when he was bad. He was Saul. He showed you when he humbled him. He showed you down on Straight Street how he was praying for 3 days. And all of a sudden, when the gospel is taught to him and he's baptized and he's placed in the church, we see Barnabas going with him and they are going to teach. But all of a sudden you see Paul's name before you see Barnabas' name. Why is that happening? Because Paul begins to be the spokesman and Barnabas is one on the side. You know, there's always one that's going to grow quicker than the other one. And that one grows quicker than the other one, is the strongest one spiritually. So the scriptures will see that his name is mentioned first. I'll show that to y'all one night. We need to see both positive and negative to learn individuals. Every rational human being recognizes the power of influence. People are dramatically conditioned by their surroundings. I want you to keep that in mind, because that plays an important part in Joshua's life. So I said, let's examine him. We can safely say that Joshua grew up in Egypt, did he not? He was in Goshen. He grew up as a slave, am I right? And growing up as a slave, guess what he had? Slave's mentality. Do you see a slave's mentality in Joshua anywhere when you read? You see a man that's really willing to do what Moses says. And you see when Moses passes him the baton, you see a leader that steps forward. All right? Joshua saw Pharaoh's attitude. He felt Pharaoh's wrath. He saw God conquer Pharaoh as well as Egypt. He saw God open up the Red Sea. He saw God give Israel water from a rock. He saw God give food from heaven. Joshua came face to face with the Lord in Joshua chapter 5. I'm saying all this for a reason, y'all. Joshua witnesses the walls of Jericho fall down. And it didn't just fall down. That was an exercise that they had to do. Every day they went around the wall. On the seventh day, guess what they did? Went around 7 times and they just simply shouted. All of that was to condition Joshua and the children of Israel. Really, y'all not the one doing it. That's right. This is God doing this. All I want you to do is simply do what I asked you to do. All right? Now watch this. Joshua witnessed at Mount Hor, God sent fiery serpents among the people because Israel was disobedient. Joshua went out and spied the promised land and brought back encouraging words. God tells Moses to take a bronze serpent and put it up on the pole. And when the children of Israel are bitten, if they would look toward the serpent, guess what would happen? They would be healed. I'm not finished. Joshua witnessed the rebellion of Korah and saw God open up the earth and swallow them. All of this is about conditioning the mindset, y'all. Joshua witnessed the people complain against the punishment of the rebellion. God sent a plague that killed 14,700 more individuals right after he opened up the earth. Now, my thing is this. Why would God have to send a plague to kill 14,000 more when they have already seen God open up the earth and kill families? Simply because they were rebellion against the leadership of Moses. Trying to get us somewhere. Let's examine Joshua. Joshua witnessed before the entrance of Canaan. More than 24,000 died, having whored after the idolatrous daughter of Moab. I put all this in here for a reason, y'all. You see people getting killed. You see people that are being disobedient. You see people that understand God is blessing them, but they forgetting where their blessings come from. We talked about fear yesterday, how that when people get afraid, they lose the whole concept of what's really going on around them. I believe that Israel were insane. Insane. Because how is it that you're going to see that God opened up the Red Sea and you're not going to believe in the God of heaven? You're going to see that God can send manna from heaven to feed you every day, but yet you don't want to believe in it? You're going to see him send fiery serpents to kill people, but yet you're not going to believe in him? Something wrong, y'all. So when we get to this point in Joshua chapter 10, you know, this fight is really because Joshua and Israel had killed, had destroyed the people, the Jericho wall. They went and fought against Ai, and because sin was in the camp, they lost the battle. But they got Achan killed and his family and everything that he owned, and then they came back and fought, and guess what they did? They won. When you see the 5 kings of the Amorites come together, they come together because they are afraid of Joshua and the children of Israel. They are afraid. So they decide to get together and go up to Gibeon and have a war against Gibeon. Gibeon sent Joshua word and tell him, come fight with us. And guess what happened? That's what they did. Now watch this. While they were fighting, the sun was going down. This was an all-day battle. Joshua says, if we had some more time, we win this battle. We just need to get some more time. Who controls time? Keep this, now watch this. With all rights, what Joshua came up as, he saw in Egypt idolatry, adultery. Why do you think God had to destroy all those fake gods of the Egyptians? That's right, they influenced. So in all right, Joshua's mind should have been messed up. Joshua was the only one saying there, I know who holds time. And because I know who holds time, I'm going to talk to him. Lord, if I could just, if the sun would just stand still, we could win this battle. Guess what God did? He answered his prayer. He answered his prayer. I've been telling you, this is what I want you to do all week. Keep in mind. Somebody quote for me Ephesians chapter 3 and verse number 20. But before I do that, how many captured yesterday that Ephesians chapter 3 and verses number 21, you cannot bring God the glory that he deserves unless you are in the church? And it can't be in just any church. It's the church by Christ. Okay, I'm ready, brother. Give him the mic, bro. I knew the time was going to get us. Yeah, go ahead.
Now unto him who is able to do exceedingly above all that we think or could imagine, unto him be glory in the church by Christ Jesus throughout all generations. Did I quote that right?
You almost got it. You almost.
It's been a long, long time.
I understand. You almost got it. It's now unto him that is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us. Now, the verse was already there. We just didn't see it. Because when Joshua said, Lord, if the sun would just stand still, we could win this battle. We didn't see Ephesians chapter 3, verses number 20, but it's actually there. Because Joshua believes that God can do anything but fail. So he says, Lord, I just need the sun to stand still. And let the moon stay over there in Ajalon. But right now I need the sun to stand still. Y'all, do we know the power that we have as Christians? I don't think we know. We don't know. Because if we had this faith that Jesus speaks of, we could actually pray prayers that would do wonders. Now, I'm not trying to tell you to go out here and pray that the sun stands still. I showed you that verse a while ago. There hadn't been a day like that day no more. I wanted to show y'all, though, and I'm going to come back tomorrow night and show you how that there was a king that God told him he was going to die. He turned his face to the wall and he prayed just to God. And before the prophet could get out of the yard, he came back and told him, you got 15 more years added to you. I was going to show you that there was a king that said, and if this is going to happen, I know where my shadow is. I need my shadow to go backwards. Guess what God did? Time went back. Y'all don't understand. That's what I'm talking about, see? He can make an axe float. So on tomorrow night, when Carvin bring the horses, and the young folks go outside, I'm hoping somebody to come back and tell me that they caused that horse to start talking. Now, you know I know that's not going to happen.
Brother Roger.
Yes, sir.
And to make it even more powerful, well, I don't know if you can say that, but and I bet you Brother Redmond's heard about this before, and I don't know how true it is, but they say it's true, that NASA did some calculations on, they were going to put some satellites out in orbit, but they had to put them. They had to go out like 10 years, well, like 100 years or 1,000 years, where they're going to be. But they also had to take into account the orbit, where the planets were going to be, where the moon was going to be, or the sun, and things like of this nature, because they didn't want those things getting too close or hitting them and all this. And they put all these calculations into these computers, and the computers stopped working. Something went wrong. And then they went back out, make a long story short, they were off one day. They were off on their calculations one day. When you put this scene and Hezekiah together, they say you come up with one whole day. That's probably where you were going with that, a whole day. When they did that, and they put and guess who was in the audience? They said a Christian was in the audience, who had went to Bible, who was in Sunday school when he was young, and he had heard about this one day. The sun stood still. And they listened to him. Of course, they said, this man is crazy. He's a fool. And they put those numbers in there to account for this, and boom, everything worked. You ever heard that, Brother Ralph?
That's true. They could never come up with the exact time or the calculation of what they were doing. I won't go into it. But, yeah, there was someone there who was a Christian that knew this story. And that is what happened. And it fit perfectly once they calculated for that lost time. They just couldn't figure it out. They went for a long time. They just couldn't figure it out. God is great. God is awesome.
That's my whole point of this week. I started out saying this. Our children are losing sight on really who's awesome. And we've got to go back and show them that it's God that's the one that's awesome. We as adults, we get so weak in our faith sometimes. We forget that there's nothing too hard for God.
Amen.
And then we come and we sit in an audience like this, but what should we really be doing? Strengthening our faith. And when you don't strengthen your faith, you become weaker. And if you become weaker, you will be destroyed. So it's important that we learn that really it's God that's awesome. Really, there's nothing too hard for God. And we've got to really strengthen our faith. I wanted us tonight to see Joshua's influence that he had with God. Because that means something. That you can have a conversation with God and actually get God to stop rotating the world. That's awesome. That Abraham can talk to God and say, God, you know, if we find 50 down there, will you save the city? You're going to negotiate with God? Do I have anybody here tonight that can really negotiate with God? Do I have anybody here tonight that really think that they can box with God and win? Okay. I just want to see. Yes. Yes, we can make requests. I say you got to strengthen your faith in order to make these requests. And I think this is so important. Like we're not getting our children to Bible classes. You know how we used to make sure kids were at Bible classes? Those 3 young ladies that Sister Mary Cheryl has, I got pictures of them when they were kids. Guess what they knew on Sunday? They knew church. They knew church. And she brought them to church if she didn't stay. But her mama would give her such a hard time that she stayed. Any questions, y'all? I thank y'all for your class time tonight. Y'all got off tonight, y'all. I'm going to pray for y'all. I'm going to pray real hard for y'all. Here come our young people. Sister Vanessa, you got a group there. Sister Pam, how many you have? I hear you, girl.